Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Crossing Time Zone, and this is a podcast brought to you by the International Student Office or the International Student Council of the University of Maryland. This podcast primarily really highlights the journey of international students here at UMD. We kind of celebrate their journey and then also learn one or two from them as they go through higher education in the United States. Today, I'm excited to have one of our PhD students in electrical engineering. He is Australian. Exactly, and he goes by the name Brandon Colelough. Right, and so he's going to tell us a little bit more about himself, and then we'll dive deeper into his journey here at the University of Maryland. Welcome to Crossing the Time Zone.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. I'm a PhD candidate down at the Department of Computer Science. I did my undergraduate degree in electrical engineering.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a Fulbright scholar, so I won a Fulbright scholarship a couple of years back. I'm over here doing my full PhD. I've got about 2.5 years to go. I've done the first 2.5 years of that. I'm also a research fellow over at the National Institutes of Health.
Okay.
My research, both here at the University of Maryland and at the National Institutes of Health, are very much aligned in what I'm doing. I won't go too much into it because we're here for the international piece today, but for the University of Maryland, primarily I look at what's called neuro-symbolic AI, and for the National Institutes of Health, I'm looking at bio-NLP, or natural language processing in medicine.
Great. So Brandon, I'm very curious to just find out, you had your undergraduate studies back home, right, in Australia, and I'm just curious to find out what really informed your decision to do your PhD outside Australia, because I know you guys also have good institutions, right?
We have fantastic institutions.
So what brought
yes.
you, what was your aspirations and dream that brought you to UMD or the United States for your PhD?
So I had two major influences that kind of pushed me to do one, postgraduate studies in general, and then two, postgraduate studies through a scholarship in the United States. The first was, so when I did my undergraduate degree in electrical engineering, we also do an honours year in Australia where you'll do a thesis. And I had two mentors for my thesis. Both of them kind of pushed me towards doing extra or graduate studies abroad so that I could, lengthen my horizons and broaden the kind of studies that I can do and then bring back to the Australian ecosystem. And then one additional kind of vector that really pushed me to do one graduate studies and then two graduate studies abroad was one of the lecturers, a man by the name of Matt Woolley. He was, a fantastic influence when I was going through my undergraduate degree, and an absolutely fantastic influence when I was looking to do graduate studies. And he really did influence and push me to go further and do more. And then he kind of pushed me to come over here to the US and look at the kind of research that I could be doing and then could bring back to Australia.
Awesome.
I love my home country. I absolutely love Australia. You'll never get me to speak ill of it.
Yeah.
But we don't have the amount of resources and we don't have the amount of people as you'll do over here in the US. So I think we've got roughly less than 30 million. So I think it's 26 or 27 million people in Australia. Don't quote me on that. And there's almost 326 million people over here in the US, also don't quote me on that, but there's a lot more people over here in the US and a lot more resources that they have for the specific field of research over here in the US than they do in Australia. We have some fantastic institutions. I went to an undergraduate degree. I did my undergraduate degree in the University of New South Wales, and that's a fantastic institution, but it just doesn't have the compute resources that institutions over here have. So, for example, down at the Department of Computer Science, there's two different high performance compute clusters that you can just get access to straight away as a graduate student, and that kind of compute power, just that resource, is not something that I would be able to get access to in Australia, and nowhere near as readily as available as you can get over here. So the reason that I wanted to come over and do extra graduate studies is so that I could get the knowledge to be able to go back to Australia and bring all that knowledge back and implement it within the Australian ecosystem. And the reason that I wanted to do it abroad, specifically in the US and specifically here in DC, is because of the immense amount of resources that are available to graduate students that allow them, a much broader field of study to be able to do more with the time that they have.
Perfect. And one of the questions I always love to ask my guests is, I always want to explore if their aspirations and visions have changed ever since they got there. And congratulations, you are a candidate, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
I just want to find out, has those visions and aspirations and dreams that you had and you shared with us, have they changed? Is it going to change or is it going to be the same?
Listen, I'm not gonna. So there's a thing called second year blues in the PhD.
Yes.
So I feel like I stumbled across the second year blues after this research study that I just did. Again, I don't want to get too down into it, but the very broad overview of what we did was a reproducibility study for neuro-symbolic AI, where we went out and we surveyed all of the literature for my specific field of study, neuro-symbolic AI, and we saw how much of it we could reproduce. Turned out it was quite low, which was not a great finding that we had, and it's kind of made me much more skeptical of the research that's out there. I feel like in my journey of getting my PhD, I've become a bit more of a skeptic or a bit more of a cynic when it comes to the research that I see out there. So, you know, for example, I'll come across a paper that has some sort of a claim.
Yeah.
When I was first starting out my PhD, I would be, you know, ecstatic. I would see some claim and I'd be like, oh my god, this is an awesome finding, what can I do with it?
Yes.
Now I see some, you know, big claim and I'm like, do I believe it?
Yeah.
You know, where did it come from? Can I reproduce it myself? Is it actually something that is grounded? But I would still say that the research skills that I have that I came over with are very much the same.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very much the same. So going back to the Fulbright scholarship that I got to come over here, the premise of why I won that Fulbright scholarship, a bit more background into me, was I was previously in a role in the Australian Army. So I was a Signals Corps officer in the Australian Army, and I wanted to get more into the AI space so that we could make intelligent decisions about the things that we're doing in one, government, two, industry, and then three, in the academic field in Australia when it comes to AI. Again, we're a small country, small amount of resources, so we do have to punch above our weight and do more with less. And I felt like I just did not have the expertise going into my PhD to be able to really advise in the roles that I was going to be in. So I wrote to Fulbright and I said, hey, I have these aspirations to get more expertise in this field of research so that I could go back to Australia and make sure that we're doing the right things. And those are still the same aspirations that I have, so I still want to become an expert in the specific field of AI so that I can go back to Australia and we can, you know, do intelligent things.
So does your work here at the University of Maryland in the United States kind of cross path with your military background as well? Do you work with any, or that is not an area that you're exploring right now?
Unfortunately, if you're not a US citizen, you can't really do any research that is affiliated with classified institutions. So there are fantastic labs in this area. A big reason why I wanted to come to DC, specifically the University of Maryland, is because one, the University of Maryland Department of Computer Science hits well above its weight. It is top 10 internationally. I'm going to give a shout out there. We are fantastic. Go Terps.
Sure.
But two, there's just an immense amount of laboratories around here within the DC area that do research into the same field that I am in and I want to be in. Unfortunately, it's a bit harder to get into those labs and to do research in conjunction with those people if you aren't a US citizen. Fortunately though, there is adjacent fields of research, such as the field of research I'm in at the moment with the National Institute of Health, that's doing pretty much, you know, from an abstracted point of view, the exact same thing, it's just in a different domain. So, again, I don't want to go too, I'm going to go too...
I mean, that's great, because I always want to unpack people's vision, because we always have dreams. We sit in planes, we do come here, and these visions and dreams do change. I'm always interested in finding out if people are still on track or what is causing their vision to change and all of that. So I appreciate that you're still within the same boundaries of the goals that you have. But I want to go into a different aspect of our conversation, and that has to do with, so when it comes to University of Maryland, for example, the international student population is very much diverse. And I think that you may be the first person I'm interviewing from a full continent, right? From Australia. So, and then there's a concept that we usually explore that is proximity to whiteness. I don't know if back in Australia you will describe yourself as a white man, and how has that really played into your experiences here in the United States compared to other international students who may not have that proximity to whiteness. So in terms of your academic experience here at UMD, how has that been when people see you and when you talk in class and when you engage with people? What are some of the things that you do experience that will be different from other international students?
I think, to me, I don't identify as a quote-unquote white person. I'm Australian. That's who I am. And you know, Aussies, we come in all shapes, sizes, colours. Doesn't matter. If you live in Australia, you're an Australian through and through.
Great.
True blue, that's what we are. So I think, listen, no offence to all you Americans, but I think there is a bit of a hang-up over here on kind of the colour of your skin or what race you are. I think from an Australian perspective, we don't care. Like, as long as you identify with the Australian culture and you know you're friendly, we will treat you the exact same regardless of kind of what you look like. So I don't know, I don't think it really affects me over here too much. I don't think I really care for it too much. I don't know if there's any counterintuitive non-confirmation bias, because it's just not something that I ever really look for, because I just don't care about the colour of my skin or you know the colour of anyone else's skin. I treat people as people, and I feel like when I go out into the world and I navigate it, I go through that lens of I assume that people are just going to treat me based off my merits and off who I am as a person, as opposed to any kind of other group identity that they assign to me. So it's not really something that I think about, and I feel like it's not something that a lot of Australians really think about, so I don't really think it affects me too much.
Great. So how has been your in-class and out-of-class experiences here at UME as an international student? Are you really getting that support that you need outside the classroom in terms of navigating where to get resources as an international student? How has been your experience so far?
Oh my good Lord, there are so many resources over here, one at the University of Maryland, and then two just in the US in general. I feel like there is a lot of there's a lot of attention given to making sure that people feel accommodated here at the university, and I've definitely felt that. I personally have not ever felt that I am, without over here in the US. So I've always felt that if I do need help, then I can find where to get it from. We have like a whole institution here, ISSS. What does ISSS stand for again? International Student Scholar Services.
Yes.
Yeah. That their whole job is to just make sure that we can get access to the resources that we need, and I feel like they do a very good job. So yeah, I feel that the US specifically does a pretty good job at accommodating international students, and I have always felt kind of welcomed over here.
All right, so let's go deeply into some of the challenges that you may have experienced as an international student. Do you remember any aha moment? And I always want to call them aha moment or cultural shocks that you may have experienced coming to, I'm sure that when you look at the social stratus in Australia, it may be almost the same as in America. We know there could be some slight differences. What are some of the things that surprised you the most?
Oh, so I've got two here. I'm going to dive right into food here in the US. But the first one, which I just feel like is such a strange culture shock. So first of all, Australian culture to me is quite similar to US culture, and it's kind of hard to say exactly what either Australian culture or US culture is, because if you go to, for example, Darwin, which is far north, Northern Territory, then the culture up there is going to be vastly different to the culture down in Melbourne. And I've lived, both at the top of Australia up near Townsville and down in Melbourne, and the culture in those two places are very different. Very similar here in the US. The culture over in California is wildly different to the culture down in like Texas, to the culture down over in Arizona.
From the Midwest,
East, West. It's very different depending on which state you're in. I feel like there's a pretty good mix here in DC. Again, I've always felt welcomed here in DC because I feel like there's a really good international community, and there's a really good, a welcoming US community that allows for that, probably because it's a transient city being the capital. But it's kind of hard to say, exactly what Australian culture is and exactly what US culture is. If I were to generalize vastly, I would say that Australian culture is much more laid back than US culture. There seems to be much more of a push towards a work grind over here into getting things done and getting a high throughput. And in Australia, if I were to generalize and try and characterize what Australian culture is, it's going down to the beach on a Saturday morning and going for a surf or something like that, which I do love as well. But I also love in the US that there is just so much more to do. Yeah, more production, but also just so much more to do because there's always things happening. But what I will say was an absolute culture shock, and I'm going to hyper-focus on this for a second, was that no one in the US for some reason watches The Simpsons growing up. Every single Aussie kid has watched at least 10 seasons of The Simpsons. It was on every night at 6 p.m. So, I can say to an Aussie, and there are other Australians here in DC, I make like some cultural reference to like an episode of The Simpsons, and they get it straight away, and I'm like, yes, my people. And then I make some sort of a cultural reference to The Simpsons to like someone here in the US, and they're just like, oh, I wasn't allowed to watch that growing up, and it blows my mind. It's an American TV show, so blows my mind that Americans don't watch it. The second thing, which I can go into at length, is the food here in the US. So
quite different.
Yeah, well, it's the culture shock that I get coming over from Australia to here in the US is that everything is pretty much the same, but there's just slight differences that are hard to pick up on until you start to really notice what those differences are. So, for example, the food.
Like quality or taste?
I'd say both with the food. So, the quality of food over here in the US, it depends on where you are in the US. So I'm going to get hate if I say all of the US food culture here is terrible, because you go down to Texas and the food there is absolutely amazing. It's amazing quality, it tastes amazing.
Absolutely.
The food here in DC specifically, it's very multicultural, but there's a lot more, in my humble opinion, it's a lot more authentic in Australia when it comes to stuff like Asian cuisine, or even surf and turf or stuff like that. In Australia, I feel like the taste for some of that food is a bit more authentic than what you get here in DC. But more than that, the quality it's different here in the US, especially when it comes to big chains. So I for one would never shop at like one of the big chain restaurants, or I would never eat at like a fast food restaurant over here in the US, just because I cannot digest. I cannot eat that food. It messes with my stomach. It messes with my gut health, which messes with my mental health, messes with my physical health. And I can back home in Australia. So I can go to the local McDonald's in Australia and eat a burger and not feel absolutely terrible the next day. I cannot go to a McDonald's here in the US, eat the food, and expect to feel fine the next day, because the stuff that they put in the food over here, the additives or the ingredients themselves, for example, generally have more genetic modification on them. They are generally sprayed with pesticides more, which aren't then washed off, and they're generally just of a lower quality. And it's hard to navigate that food ecosystem until you kind of figure it out. So for the first 6 months of me being here, I struggled a little bit, because the food, again, is so much different to the food that we have in Australia from a quality perspective. So I was eating less over here. I generally have 3 meals a day in Australia. And I was going to the gym more over here. So I was going to the gym like 5 days a week, eating 2 meals a day. And I was getting bigger. I was bloating up. And getting bigger than I was in Australia. And it's like so counterintuitive, but it's because of the ingredients that I put in the food over here. And I didn't figure that out until I really started looking at everything that I was eating. The bread, for example, I cannot eat a lot of American bread. I have to make it myself from scratch, and I have to make it with ingredients that are of high quality. So I can't just go to like a regular store and get flour off the shelf, because it's probably not going to be the right type of flour, and then it's going to make me bloated. And I speak to a lot of my colleagues, like my international colleagues, and they have this issue where they're all like gluten-free now, or they're lactose intolerant, but they're only gluten-free and lactose intolerant here in the US. We go back to our home country and it's fine. I have an issue with some of the milk here in the US, for example. Luckily, I found a couple milk providers who are really good, and they provide high quality product. Shout out to South Mountain Creamery, they do really good milk. But if you don't know that food ecosystem, then it's hard to navigate. There's apps that can help you though. So for example, I use Yuka, but there's other ones like Trash Panda, and they are phenomenal at being able to like actually see what's in your food and what you're putting in your body, which make it a lot better being over here in the US. So like I said before, for the first 6 months of living here, because I didn't know how to navigate the food ecosystem, and I didn't know what shops I could and could not eat at. I found it hard, but once I figured out, which shops were actually selling me high quality food, which farmers markets I could go to, specifically which chain restaurants I could or could not eat at. Once I figured all that out, it settled down and it was a lot better. But you have to, especially as an international student, you haven't grown up
Within the system, so.
With this system. You don't have all Americans have these superpowers where they can just eat anything.
Okay.
Yeah. If an American told me that they started eating uranium, I'd feel like, yeah, that checks out, just because I feel like Americans can digest like anything. They just have this ability because they have grown up in this food ecosystem where there's a lot more stuff that's put into their food and everything has high fructose corn syrup in it, that they are just able to, digest anything and not feel terrible. Whereas me, with my weak Australian stomach, I come over here and I can't eat a lot of the genetically modified foods, and it messes with my stomach, which messes with my brain, which messes with my physical health. So I really had to start looking at all of the foods that I was eating.
I think that cuts across a lot of international student experiences, especially the first semester. A lot of them go through the same thing, finding culturally appropriate food within the system that really kind of matches their own energy and all of that. So I think that is pretty much, and difficult for you going through all of that, and also taking that steps on your own to really figure out what would be the best food to eat and how to do it. But one question that is also very interesting for me is, we all do know that there are a lot of things that you brought from Australia to the United States in terms of, and I'll still go back to culture, I'll still go back to certain things, that lifestyle, right? I'm sure there are certain things, like you mentioned, in Australia you didn't have to go to the gym 5 times a week. Are there things that you really brought with you to the system that are still valuable, and are there things that you don't do them anymore because of how the system is here in the United States?
I feel like I'm still authentically me. You can take the boy out of Australia, you can't take Australia out of the boy. So I feel like I was going to the gym at least 3 times a week in Australia. I had to bump it up because of the food over here. But I still do the same things that I was doing in Australia, just in the US. But I will say that I have definitely added to the things, to my hobbies, to the kind of things that I can do, because of just the vastness of how much stuff they have over here. Something that I really love about American culture is the ability to go out and do social activities and them not be predicated on getting drunk. As much as I love Aussie culture, we are a bunch of piss pots. We love getting drunk. We love, going out and getting on the beers every weekend. And as fun as that is, it can get a little bit old when you don't drink as much as other people. I don't drink as much as other people. Something I do love about American culture is there is a lot more social activities that you can go out and do where it's not predicated on drinking. There's run clubs over here. There's a lot more sports teams that you can join up to. There's a lot more social activities, like, for example, salsa dancing, swing dancing, all that kind of stuff that you can get into, where it's very social, but it's not predicated on having to get drunk to be able to do it, which I do love about the American culture.
Great. So I want to take you into your social life, as well as we bring curious to explore is your social life, right? I know you're a PhD doing greater things, research with NIH and all of that, and one of the struggles for international students is sometimes where to go to have fun, right? And where to go to, and just kind of be able to dive deeper into the American culture. How has your experience been finding places to go? There are 50 states in the US. How many have you been? And what will be your experience across the state that you've ever visited?
So before we get onto that, I'm gonna start with that I made the very conscious effort that when I moved over here, I would not own a television. So I don't own a TV, so I can't just go home and veg out on the couch. I thought to myself coming over, this is a whole 24-hour flight to get here. It's literally the other side of the world. I'm not about to go out and live in the US just to stay home and watch TV. So I try very hard to time manage so that I can have a social life, and also, still perform in my roles both as a research fellow at the National Institute of Health and then also a graduate student here at the University of Maryland. And you can manage that. I feel like as an international student coming over, you can definitely time manage to the point where you can have a very good quality, high throughput of work, and also have a good social life, and also do everything else that you need to kind of maintain yourself, like go to the gym, sleep 8 hours a day, which
People who sleep 8 hours a day?
Yeah, listen, I try. But when it comes to social life, there are so many social groups over here that you can become a part of, and everyone is friendly here in DC specifically. I feel like US culture is very inviting, and if you embrace that kind of US culture and you embrace that hospitality, then I think there are so many opportunities to be able to go out and find a really good, active social life. So, for example, I have many friends that I made over here from going to networking events. Like, I'm from Australia. I've been to the Australian Embassy a few times. I've got plenty of friends that I have made going through the Australian Embassy to social events. A bit more background or lore on me, I also too play the bagpipes. So I joined a bagpipe band over here and I play with them at least twice a week. I also have taken up swing dancing, so country swing dancing. I thought to myself, right, Cressy, what is the most American thing I can do whilst in America? Well, country dancing. So I started going out. I do line and country swing dancing probably every Friday. A shout out to Firehouse Fridays. They do a fantastic in DC Penn Social every Friday. It is the hottest spot in DC on a Friday night.
You are a social butterfly then.
I try to get out and I try to do things.
Sure.
I don't know if I'd call myself a social butterfly, but I try and time manage so that I have a good amount of time, at least 8 to 12 hours a day, to do PhD work or work with my graduate fellow research over at the National Institute of Health, and then I try to allot myself some time to go out and be social. I feel like coming over here to the US, you would be robbing yourself of a massive experience if you didn't try to go around and be social, explore, at least in your home state. I think I've been to 10 US states now, ranging from California.
In 3 years.
What's that, sorry?
In 3 years?
Yeah, in 3 years.
Awesome.
So I'm hoping to get around and see a lot more in the time that I have here.
Bucket list. Want to do all the 50 before we graduate?
Oh, I haven't been to Montana yet. I am desperate to get up to Montana.
Cool.
But yeah,
have you been to Seattle?
No, I haven't been up to Seattle either.
Okay.
I'm planning on doing a road trip to go up through and see some of the more northern states. And I did a road trip down to Florida, for example, through Georgia. Savannah, Georgia is absolutely beautiful. It was like fantastic when I went through there. And there's so many like hidden gemstones that you can just drive a couple hours out from DC and be in a completely different place with a completely different culture. So the culture here in DC is vastly different to the culture in New York. It's only a 3-hour train trip though.
Yeah.
So if I want to, I could get on a train today and be in New York in 3 hours and then
come back.
Yeah, and then come back. And it could be, it's vastly different. And Philadelphia is there I think it's about 2 hours. So they're one of the stops on the Amtrak. And the culture in Philadelphia is also different to here in DC and up in New York. You can go down to like Virginia, a couple like 30 or 40 minutes out from DC. The culture is vastly different than it is one in like northern Virginia and two here in DC. You go up to Pennsylvania, you start seeing the fireworks signs come up, and you're like, yeah, this is going to be a fun time. Fireworks are legal up in Pennsylvania, so you can buy a bunch and let them off. So yeah, I feel like I try and make time to be social. And I feel like it's a very inviting and welcoming culture in that if you look for the opportunities, there are an ample amount that you can go out and find and use to be social and find new groups of people.
Great. So it appears that you find much more community outside the university, but I want to find out most of the social systems on campus. So for example, do you like going for the games? Maryland Day and all of that. How do you find the social network on campus as very much beneficial to you as an international student?
I'll start with the comment about like out in DC, and then I'll go into the University of Maryland. Something that is fantastic that I love about DC is the metro. There is, I wish the Purple Line was in. The Purple Line is coming. They're testing it. But they have the Green Line. It's like a 10-minute walk from campus, like a 5-minute bus ride from campus. And within 30 minutes, you can get into DC proper. And there is, again, so much to do in DC. But if you did want to have more of like a social life here on campus at the University of Maryland, then there is so much that you can do. I talked about dancing before. There's a salsa club here. There's a West Coast swing club here on campus that they do free classes to like teach you how to do bachata, salsa, how to do West Coast swing. The football games, excuse my French here, I don't know if I can say this on a podcast.
I am a whore
for free merchandise. I will go to all the goddamn football games just to get their free t-shirts. I love it. I love getting all their like free swag.
Yes.
I love going to all the baseball games and the basketball games. For graduate students, the tickets are generally free.
Yeah.
So, you know, getting a couple of your mates together, going down to the basketball game, you know, gives you that sense of culture and community. Personally, I think American football, don't hate me for this, all you Americans, I think American football is just a little bit too slow for me. I prefer like rugby union or rugby league, and I would also prefer playing as opposed to watching. But, you know, there is just so much that you can do here on campus and so many social circles that you can find yourself in. I think it's called the First Look Fair. They do it within the first month of the semester. There are so many extracurricular clubs that you can join here at the University of Maryland to be able to find and network with people. There's like run clubs, there's trail hiking clubs, there's skateboarding clubs, there's rocket clubs, there's games clubs. There's just, there is too much almost. There is such an abundance of stuff that you can do here in the US, at the University of Maryland, that the issue that you have is trying to like find the right fit for you and trying to strategically use your time in the best way, as opposed to not having anything to do.
Awesome. So you have, let me say, technically 2 more years to go. That is
2.5 more years.
2.5 more years to go. Great. And so if you were to come back to University of Maryland again, what would be the top 3 things that you would do differently?
Top 3 things that I would do differently. Like the first one, and if I can give any advice to anyone coming over here, it is to watch your food when you first come over. So watch the food, like the stores that you're buying food from. Download a couple apps that, you know, tell you what's in your food, and eat better than you do in your home country, because you really have to look at what you're putting into your body. I don't know if I would do this differently, because I did it when I came over here, but I would join up to like a few of the extracurricular activities or the social circles that I'm interested in, so that I can find like-minded people. And again, like the First Look Fair is fantastic for that. You can just go around as either an undergraduate or a graduate student and find people who are very similar to you. And then I would also kind of branch out from the university into DC and into like the rest of the US proper to kind of see what's around. So I feel like you would be robbing yourself of an experience if you came over to the US and you didn't explore out and you didn't kind of see what's out there.
I mean, I love the DMV. If you don't love it in Maryland, you can go to DC. If you don't love it in DC, you can go to Virginia. So I really love the culture, and like you mentioned, it's much more pretty. I think it's diverse, right?
Yeah.
You'll find everything that you need within the community, which makes it very interesting, and I encourage people to come to the University of Maryland, right?
Yeah. Come be a Turk, we love it.
Exactly. So there's a final question I ask all my guests every time. And it's basically for me to know how much you know your university.
Oh. Righto, let's do some trivia.
Yes, and it's always interesting. So I have a very simple question I'm going to ask you to find out if you really know your university. Are you ready for that?
Send it.
If you're able to answer that correctly, there is a gift that we do give you.
Okay, righto.
So your first question on that slot is, who is the president of our university?
Darryl Pines.
Oh!
Yeah, straight off the bat. How many questions we got to go?
No.
Just one?
Alright, just one.
Just one? Oh.
Just one.
Didn't even hesitate, look at that.
Exactly, because that has been a question that we've not had student answer them correctly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so good that you're able to get that on point. Because, I mean, listen, people come to school and like they are very much so into their class activities and research and everything. They don't care about what happens within the entire ecosystem. So thank you for knowing who the president is, and I'm sure that will let the president know that you know his name.
I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And finally, if you have any advice or any suggestion for international student engagement here at UMD, especially to ISS, with the work that they do, what would be some of the thoughts that you will share?
Come to the orientation sessions that we do at ISSS. We have so many international students volunteer as the coordinators for ISSS every semester. So if you come as an international student here to the University of Maryland, 1, definitely go to that orientation, and then 2, they have a coffee hour every week on a Thursday. If you want to find, an international community and you don't know where to start, coffee hour every Thursday. Every Thursday they send out emails to tell you where it is. Definitely engage with that.
All right, thank you so much, Brandon, for showing up and being our guest for today, and also opening up for us to know much more about you. When are you visiting Australia next?
Oh, that's it. I just went back home to Australia to renew my visa. Probably not for at least another year. But only time will tell.
All right. So wish you well in the next 2.5 years that you complete your PhD, and I'm sure that will bring you back onto crossing time zone to really know what has happened in the next 2.5 years. And so thank you for making time for us today. And so if you're watching us, we had Brandon as our guest today, and he is a PhD student, a PhD candidate, in the electrical engineering program, and he was our guest for today. My name is
Computer science program.
Computer science,
yeah.
Yes, thanks for that. My name is Kwesi Sam. I am a final year PhD student in higher education, student affairs and international education policy, and I'm defending my dissertation in 2 months. So,
exciting.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. See you in our next episode.
Thank you very much.
All right.